Player Profiler Nation. How are we doing tonight? My name is Matt Babich. I'm your host tonight on Mock Draft Live. Yes, I have the contrarian shades on. No, it is not because I want to stunt. I actually got my pupils dilated today. So no bright lights for me. Got to protect those peeps. How are we doing today, everyone? We have a lot of fantasy football relevant news to go over, and we can do that as we draft a weekly winners lineup on Underdog. Y'all are going to help me win 20K at least once, maybe 40K. Let's get into it. All right. So we have here an Underdog lobby. Let me get rid of this overlay. There we go. Actually, let's keep it back up. We're going to keep the overlay. And we are going to hop into a weekly winners lineup. So for those of you who do not know, weekly winners essentially pays out the top 3% of entrants every single week with the top prize of $20,000. So every week you have a shot at $20,000. It is a season-long DFS tournament, if that makes sense. It is a very interesting format, one I haven't drafted a ton of yet, but we're going to get into it today. And we're going to see what spot we get. I've been getting a lot of picks in the back half of drafts, particularly in the back 3 picks, 10, 11, and 12. And that is one of my favorite starting spots because you can capitalize on the wide receiver tier that is at that range. You got guys like CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is my favorite start in fantasy football right now, is going CeeDee Lamb and then Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, even with some veteran value. There's a lot going on in that part of the draft. And then you can come right back around in your 3-4 turn, get another elite receiver like DK Metcalf, and then top it all off with a hero RB captain like Rhamondre Stevenson, especially now after this Ezekiel Elliott news. Ezekiel Elliott signing a contract with the Patriots. You all know that by now, but I want to hear what y'all think of this situation. As a Patriots fan, I myself am not very moved. If you watch Rhamondre Stevenson out there, he was a baller as a ball carrier. He carried the load, as a pass catcher, and he's a do-it-all back. And that's what he's going to do in 2023. I'm not moved by the presence of goal line carries. If Rhamondre was a top 10 back last season with Damian Harris, he's certainly a top 10 back this season without Damian Harris and with Ezekiel Elliott, both plotters who are goal line guys who do not catch passes. So these are not the archetype of somebody who's going to take away touches. I would have been more concerned for Rhamondre if there was a growing drumbeat for Pierre Strong, somebody who could be utilized in both parts of that game. But this is Stevenson's role. Stevenson's probably going to end up with a 15% target share. So I'm perfectly comfortable with taking Stevenson in all my lineups. We're at pick 9. So coming around here at 33 and then 40. Here's going to be the litmus test. Let's see if Rhamondre Stevenson makes it to pick 40. So he's at 31 right now in ADP, which he's RB9 here in this format, which is interesting because he was late 20s here just earlier in the day. So the news, people drafting have already, hey, you gotta cover all your bases. I went to the Kevin Durant School of Self-Awareness, so I know what I'm doing up here. But yeah, so he was late 20s earlier today, and right now he is RB9, was RB8. The weekly winners format has some different ADP than your standard Underdog, and that is because a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who was an RB1, the RB1, and has that ability to just pop off and give you that RB1 overall week. That is of higher value here in this format because if you can, flop the nuts, if you will, for poker terms, then you can win $20,000 in multiple separate weeks. So I still think Rhamondre Stevenson is a top 10 back in this format. That's reflected in his current ADP. We're not going to go running back first here. Amon-Ra's been going a lot later. My CeeDee Lamb exposure is absurd. I wonder if we're going to do that again. If Cooper Kupp falls, we're obviously going to just take the risk on the injury and take a guy who was going at pick 4 or 5 earlier on in this season. And Kupp goes. See, the reason I don't like Diggs here is because it's going to be very hard to stack with Josh Allen at ADP. And I'm not interested in this format unless I can get a lot of good correlation, because you're building a DFS lineup that you're going to have every single week. So once again, I'm going to roll with CeeDee Lamb because he is a candidate to be a top 3 receiver. I was debating going with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think those are 2 guys who I would take over AJ Brown, who I would take over Stephon Diggs, especially in this format, again, where you're building that DFS lineup, because with the Lions, you have Jared Goff, who's very affordable. You have Sam Laporta, who could be a guy who sits at your tight end 2 and gets 5 games with multiple red zone targets, potentially multiple touchdowns. And with some shootout games, you could potentially have a top 5 quarterback, top 3 receiver, and top 5 tight end in your lineup at a very affordable cost. So the Lions are a team I'm interested in this format. At the right ADP, I got just completely screwed over earlier in a draft. Took CD, took Cooks, and then I had Pollard. And then Dak Prescott went 20 picks ADP, naked Dak Prescott in this format. You can't get more casual than that. If you're going naked quarterback in weekly winners and Underdog, you simply don't get the format. You don't see a DFS analyst these days not promoting the art of correlation, and it doesn't make any sense. This is why I'm debating going Saquon Barkley here in the next pick, because we have then, instead of a Tony Pollard stack here, I think I might end up doing that because I did it earlier today and it didn't work out, and I kind of want to feel vindicated. But Saquon Barkley, you're going to get that opposing force twice a season. But now that I, just thinking it over, we're going to go correlation, we're going to go DFS, and we're going to take Saquon Barkley. We don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. And with Tony Pollard at ADP, if it's a game where CeeDee Lamb is destroying, are we going to have Tony Pollard hitting close to that RB1? And that's a tough dichotomy to think about, because it's very possible, and we've seen it. We saw it multiple times last year where Pollard was a top 3 back, RB1 overall on the week even, and CeeDee Lamb was a top 5 receiver as well. But I have a lot of Pollard and Lamb, especially in this weekly winners format. I believe 2 out of my 4 teams have Pollard and Lamb. And you get 2 weeks in the season where you could be pushed up by Saquon Barkley and CeeDee Lamb. And I'm willing to take the bet that Saquon has a blow-up game in a high shootout game where Pollard and Lamb, you're almost kind of fighting each other. There are going to be weeks where they boom together, but it's going to be tough to rely on that. Now, I have 2 separate paths to the number 1 overall at their respective positions, and 2 weeks out of the season, I have them both together in one game. So hard to scoff at, either direction there. Tony Pollard's still on the board at pick 22 here, which is interesting. I would certainly rather have him than Derrick Henry. That's an interesting start. Like, see, going naked Hurts I can get behind because he's just going to have so many blow-up weeks. This start I can get behind with Mahomes and Eckler. You're getting that matchup upside twice a season. Would like to have Kelsey with Mahomes, but getting the QB1 with just throwing darts late round and upset. You could just Tony, Moore, Rashee Rice. You could just pile them all in there, and one of them just has to have a good week. You can even throw in Jerick McKinnon, and you can just kind of throw in some dart throws and hope that one of them makes your lineup. So I like that start as well. Any start with DK Metcalf is a start that I'm a fan of, except for this one because I think Calvin Ridley is overrated. But again, this is the difference of playing in a DFS centered format where Calvin Ridley holds much more upside because you're really just betting for one wide receiver one overall week out of him. So it's very maintainable. Rhamondre Stevenson sitting here at 29. Now that I have Saquon, he's not necessarily going to be my hero RB candidate. He's definitely not going to be my hero RB candidate because we already have one. But I'm not sure that's going to stray me away from taking him there. Amari Cooper certainly looks promising. I think we're going to go receiver here, potentially even Keenan Allen, as we try and maybe come back around. And Justin Herbert won't make it back. Potentially. If we can do Allen and Herbert on the back end, I'd be really happy with that. Herbert's got a lot of cheaper pass catching options. Although my other thought here is that we go Giants, Dallas, just full on play for the shootout. Kind of narrows our outs in terms of what we have to rely on a week-to-week basis. But Stevenson, Gibbs still there. Could potentially go Fields and DJ Moore. That would really throw things for a loop. But yeah. All right. Let's do it. We're gonna try and go Fields. We're gonna try and go Fields and DJ Moore. I don't know how this is gonna work, but I want to try it. This is not a start I would generally find myself in, and I feel like it's just the weekly winners format that is allowing this. Justin Fields has quarterback one upside every single week, drafted at the QB5. And so if I can get him and DJ Moore back to back, it feels like we're at the right spot to try this at. And then we can get Roschon or Khalil Herbert late. We can get some exposure there. Cole Kmet is somebody who's an obvious DFS tout with his frame and his previous workload in the red zone. My girlfriend's calling me. This is not good. I'm going to have to ignore that right there. We're on stream. Some things are more important. Rhamondre Stevenson still on the board here as we approach pick number 40. Gotta text her back. Hold on. On a podcast, we'll call in a bit. Okay. Approaching pick 40 here. There. The slide stops at pick 36. ADP of 31. I got him at 38 here in another draft today. Feels like that's where it's going to settle for Stevenson, right by pick 40, but only about one or two RBs down on a draft-to-draft basis. Still think that's too low. Gibbs is sharing a backfield with a stable commodity in David Montgomery. And it just feels like if you're playing in a DFS mindset, Stevenson, a guy who could lead his team in targets on any given week. We saw it last season and not much has changed. And Jahmyr Gibbs cannot lead his team in targets any given week. And he can't he probably won't even lead his team in goal line touches week in and week out. So when you're looking at all these high value fantasy points, yes, I love Gibbs as a prospect, but I don't like him in this DFS preseason drafts until we have a better idea of the usage. When you go into DraftKings contests, FanDuel, whatever, these single week contests, that makes Gibbs a lot more appealing because we'll understand the usage and the likely opportunity on a game-to-game basis. Whereas if we're drafting blindfolded right now, Rhamondre Stevenson still looks to have a majority of those fantasy-friendly touches in New England. So I'm definitely favoring Stevenson over Gibbs in drafts. Now, the Breece Hall slide is going to be interesting after, well, it wasn't just because he got auto-picked. It would have been interesting if iBone11 didn't get auto-picked. Congrats, casual. Look at this start. A.J. Brown. The Garrett Wilson Breece Hall is somewhat savvy, but I'm not. That was after ADP too. I'm not buying that. That was even on purpose. It would have been interesting to see where he went had iBone 11 not have been on auto pick. I think Breece Hall's cost was there's already an element of Dalvin Cook or some other veteran baked in. So like Rhamondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott, I don't see this drastically depressing his draft value. It does, however, make me nervous for my exposure and for his upside, because even the difference of being able to select somebody on the other side of a turn, being able to select Breece Hall is already going in the 4th round, but being able to select Rhamondre on the 4th round side of the 3-4 turn can be so valuable when considering positional upside. In another draft I did earlier today, landed DK on the front half of the 3rd, and then was able to get Rhamondre Stevenson on the way back. And I got to say, that start is probably my favorite in fantasy football, being able to get guys like CD and Amon-Ra St. Brown and then follow it up with DK and Rhamondre Stevenson is just about as well as you can execute the hero RB strategy this season. I would say with the absence of Justin Fields, there's always different scenarios when you're talking about correlation and week to week performances. Taking Keenan Allen instead of Fields, then following up with Herbert would have been a real solid way to start a hero RB strategy too. We're going to come up on an interesting tier where my gut is okay. Well, my gut was going Darren Waller to have that, but that is gone. So that is severely disappointing. I'm going to highlight Diontae Johnson because I think he's a nice pivot for stacking purposes. But Terry McLaurin is a tough one for me to buy into. And we're just going to let the clock run out here and grab Diontae Johnson. He's a guy with, if the touchdown regression hits, and I am personally somebody who is all in on the resurgence of the Pittsburgh Steelers, if Diontae Johnson hits that positive touchdown regression, he's going to be a top 24 guy in fantasy football, and he's going to have those weeks where he spikes for a 7-catch, 80-plus yard and 1 touchdown game, and you're looking down the barrel of 21 points. That is kind of like an 80th percentile outcome every single week. And then, because everyone loves to take Dak Prescott where he's going in these best ball drafts, which makes sense, if I don't get Dak Prescott, it's so easy to pivot to Pittsburgh, and getting 80% of that production across the entire season at an immense value, QB 12 versus QB 24 for Kenny Pickett. So that's kind of the rationale behind the Diontae Johnson pick. We're in half PPR, which does depress Diontae Johnson's value just a tad, but not a ton here. So JSN is who we're looking at next. Miss me with this entire tier of running backs. I do like Cam Akers because he's going to be on a team that's going to have to check down a lot. Quarterback's going to be under duress. So Cam Akers could have a lot of targets this season, and he is the team's projected goal line back. Madison has never really done it over a long stretch. Pierce, I am in the camp that he is going to massively underwhelm this season. This team is going to be behind, and they signed Devin Singletary to pass block and be an asset in the passing game. So I'm not buying any sort of involvement there. You go naked Goddard with this NFC, Saquon Barkley, CeeDee Lamb, but I think that's getting a little too cute with correlation. And I'm going to get a guy in a high octane passing attack, again, giving us another out, albeit less appetizing, if we get kind of screwed on quarterback. And I'm going to take a guy in JSN who could absolutely blow up. And if any of DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett misses time, we're looking at somebody who immediately has top 12 upside week to week. And the argument's already there with the talent for him having that same upside every week. He's going to be the guy in the slot running over the middle of the field. These are fantasy friendly targets. And, you know, shockingly enough, especially when teams are playing zone, it's easier to find that open space in the middle of the field. And JSN is just such a fluid route runner. He's so pro ready that he's a rookie who I'm all in on an ADP. And every time, especially with this weekly winners, where Seattle is going to be in a division with LA, San Francisco has a beatable pass secondary, and oh my God, I'm blanking on the third team. Seattle is along with Frisco, the Rams. The Rams are going to be just awful. And then, yeah, it's just going to be a shit fest of a division in terms of defensive quality, even in Seattle. So it's going to be a lot of high scoring games. Arizona, good gravy. You can just turn off the stream now. I couldn't even remember every team in the NFC South. NFC West. I'm doing great today, everyone. It's Monday. It's what Mondays are for. So, and here's where this is funny, because Madison, Sanders, Pierce all go, but Cam Akers is the best choice out of all four. Sanders, it's really nice to buy into a video of the coach saying that a running back is going to get 50 passes or 50 catches. This is the same running back who told us that we should draft Nyheim Hines in fantasy before the season started. And look how that turned out. They literally traded him in the middle of the season after not using him at all besides special teams. And so coach speak just begins to get too easy to buy when we haven't had football on for so long. And then you have DeAndre Swift, who's not even, he's barely getting pass catching work in camp. It was a notable development in camp that he was getting pass catching work. You have Javonte Williams, who is coming back from a multi-ligament tear at record speed. And again, Cam Akers is a cheaper cost, or a more expensive cost, but in a similar situation as Rhamondre Stevenson, where we're looking at a bad offensive line, a team who's going to be playing from behind very often, and a quarterback who's going to be forced to check down, especially because there's not a lot of receiving options. And so we're looking at a team with a much worse defense than the Patriots was last year. And so we could be seeing a lot of significant touches for Akers in this backfield. And he's being forgotten about right now. And it's going to make me mad because I'm quite certain we're not going to get him. There we go. So 14 picks after ADP goes Cam Akers to just one of the most lifeless teams. Why are you not taking Tua Tagovailoa? You have Tyreek Hill, you have Jaden Waddle. I might take Tua just so that he cannot come back to you. Because that's just, it's a casual move. And it's just, it makes me laugh, makes me remember who we're drafting with out here in these streets sometimes. It's going to become a much interesting decision to see where we go here with our next pick. I love the idea of Rachaad White with one of our two picks. I don't know if he'll make it back. Good. Eyebone took to a Eyebone again. What are we doing here? What is this? What is this setup that we have going on? You go naked AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. You better be focusing on Rodgers and the Jets, because it's gonna be rough for you out in these streets if you don't. I don't know if Rachaad White's gonna make it back. He is the obvious pick here at one of the two. Cooks has been getting some steam, but the thing is, I'm not really that in on Cooks anyway. Montgomery was the question mark here at this tier. And yeah, with the projected role in the game, within the passing offense, I think Tampa Bay is going to be one of these offenses that isn't as bad as we think, along with like New Orleans. And so James Cook was tough here, because with his scripted touches in a high octane offense, he could be RB1 multiple different weeks. But I think I'm saving RB1 for Saquon Barkley and getting a guy who I think will be much more often in the top 12 and top 10, and getting that guy in Rachaad White, who I think I can have support my lineup every single week. Connor was another guy who kind of fit that mold. And so when we come back here, it'll be interesting, because I don't want to go too heavy into the Cowboys, but I think Gallup at cost is somebody I prefer, and I think I like rolling in with Dak, CD, Gallup, and Jake Ferguson later in drafts, and having that quad stack. I've seen the data. It's a minute drop, but there is a drop in expected advance rate and playoff points when you get to having a certain amount of players on one team on your roster. And when we're thinking about, we have the alpha and CeeDee Lamb, and we're just trying to sneak in another receiver into our lineups, I'll take a guy. Well, we don't even have to worry about it now because Cooks goes, but I'll take a guy who's probably going to be a better red zone target in Gallup, who has a depressed value because he's a year and a half off of surgery. And this makes our next pick interesting. We're at an interesting spot here. Jahan Dotson, who I really love, Sky Moore, Elijah Moore. Dotson goes, and we're between Sky Moore and Elijah Moore. And we saw the scripted touches early, less of an ambiguous situation. The alpha could be Cooper. The alpha could not be Cooper in this offense. So I'm going to take a shot on Elijah Moore here. We wanted someone in a high octane passing offense, because really, when you think about it, again, we're building a DFS lineup that is repeated every single week. And so a guy like Elijah Moore is going to have a lot of exposure on a week-to-week basis. And Elijah Moore's price point, by the time we get into the season in DFS and FanDuel lineups, it could be closer to wide receiver 27 a few weeks into the season. So getting a guy week to week at a wide receiver 39, 40 price right now on Underdog feels pretty sweet. Sky Moore is another guy who could have a big share of the red zone work. We saw what they were able to script up there in KC. Hitting about, not even at the halfway point yet, approaching the halfway point here in the draft. And so kind of review our team. I probably should have just went with Dak Prescott, and just went 14 picks after ADP. I don't think I thought that one all the way through, ladies and gentlemen. I don't. It happened to me before, and I just set myself up for it to happen again. I don't think that was incredibly smart on my part. We staked a lot in the Dallas passing game by taking CeeDee Lamb, and we're saying that that's going to be our path to success, right? Bears, Giants, Cowboys. That's how we win games. That's how we're going to push for the money in this lineup, and risking not having our QB1 for our wide receiver one is not a move I'm necessarily proud of. So we'll see if it ends up kind of paying off for us regardless. I don't like to look at the draft board in these scenarios. We have 3 teams with 1 quarterback, so that never truly bodes well. It's probably going to be one of these teams that I was talking shit about. It's always that. It's always one of those lineups that you just relentlessly berate in your draft room. You just make fun of all the picks. And then boom, they hit you with just a devastating blow that you cannot recover from. And I'm praying. I'm about to get on my hands and knees. Here I am. I'm on my knees right now. And we're in prayer that Dak Prescott makes it back to me. This guy, Ibone, is going to... Oh, God. Jalen Hurts, too, and Darren Waller. I really don't like the look of this. Got 16 seconds to glory. If this person auto picks Dak Prescott, I might end the stream. I might end the stream if this person times out and takes Dak Prescott. Let's go. Can we get some hype in the chat for that, please? I feel like that was deserved. If there's any, chat's been kind of dead today, and I feel like we deserve some hype for that. Dak Prescott, he made it back to us at 105. Waiting game plays out perfectly. We have our cake, and we're about to eat it too. So we're going to take Dak. I truly hate this range for wide receivers. There's just not many there. Like, it gets to the point where I almost want to just take Darnell Mooney far ahead of ADP, be 18 picks ahead of ADP, which I don't know if I can necessarily get behind, but at that rate, it's going to be 15 picks until our next pick, and we only have 5 receivers before Mooney is next up. I think Mooney can have a really hefty role in this passing game as the number 2. No hype in the chat for that. That's pretty sad. I don't think I'm doing a good enough job as a host then. I'm not getting you guys riled up. That's on me. I got to learn. I got to be better. But Antonio Gibson was going to be one of my picks there. Just a high upside pick every week in that pass catching role. AJ Dillon has a lot of upside, kind of correlate with Chicago. Devon A-Chain has a lot of asymmetrical upside, wouldn't necessarily be correlated with anybody. Zach Charbonnet is also not a bad pick here in this range to get our third RB, but you need someone with some asymmetrical upside here. I don't want to be tethered and hope for an injury. I want somebody who could truly break out in this offense. So I'm going to do another risk play here with waiting on Mooney, and I'm going to take a flying dart on Devon A-Chain. He's playing behind a fragile running back in Raheem Mostert. He's a guy who is in his age 31 season, only has a small sample of high octane performances across a whole season. And by that, I mean, he has literally one season where he was a high octane rusher for a long stretch. And when you look at the archetypes here in the Miami Dolphins backfield, the other guy who I've been drafting, actually my second most exposed running back here on Underdog, Jeff Wilson, who I flat out love because he's RB, 75 value. And he is a starter in the offense, and he is the least similar to Devon A-Chain as a prospect. And so if I see A-Chain coming for anybody in this offense, it's Raheem Mostert. And they want that Jeff Wilson in between the tackles, goal line kind of back. But we saw what A-Chain has been doing in camp. I know he's undersized, but The running backs with asymmetrical upside start looking really shaky. Jalen Warren, satellite back, handcuff. Tyler Algier, handcuff. Raheem Mostert in a 3-headed backfield where he's the oldest and the most fragile. Donta Foreman can't pass block, can't pass catch. So, and he's in a 3-headed backfield where he has he's the least specialized out of all 3. Kenneth Gainwell, and Philly could roll out a 4-person backfield. Roschon Johnson. That's the next back, really, with true asymmetrical upside is Roschon Johnson, and he's all the way down at ADP 160. So ideally, he's our RB4. I'm okay with a ton of risk at running back with Saquon and Rachaad White. I truly don't want anybody who doesn't have a path to being their backfield's touch leader at this point in the draft. As much as I like Singletary, he's not really a guy I want to chase unless he's my last running back, unless we're going 5 deep and Singletary's the last option. That's the only time I'm going to do this. There's no chance we get Mooney on the way back. So RIP there. But based on ADP, we were only getting one of Mooney or Kmet anyway. With 0 tight ends, I'm not even 100% sure we're going to get him. So many people are letting the clock bleed in this league. Interesting. Dalton Schultz goes at pick 125. It's an interesting spot to take him in. But for my purposes, I really like it. For our purposes, I think it's a really good pick. It's a really good pick. I like it. We're 1 pick away from being able to secure at least one more piece to a Bears stack. Let's see what happens here as time runs down on iBone. Jared Goff right now is an incredible value in this format. He could be the QB1. You remember the Seattle game, Seattle-Detroit game? Everyone at PlayerProfiler at least was saying, go stack Seattle, go stack Detroit, just have a ball. Yeah, that was it. That was the winner. And it's not what I went for here. I discussed it a little bit earlier in the show, but doing that, trying to take a piece of one single shootout game in this format is valuable because, I mean, 20,000 on a $15 stake. We're going to definitely take Cole Kmet so we can lock in our wide receiver 1. $20,000 of a $15 stake is pretty hefty. So it's truly worth it to take some shots at some of these high octane games, getting Kansas City and Denver Denver and the Chargers, Kansas City and Cincinnati. These week 17 stacks that are really, really valuable. Getting that one game where you have the nuts can be so valuable in this league, in this format. Literally be worth $20,000. So we're going to come back around here and we are going to take Michael Gallup as our wide receiver 6. Should this all hold. Gallup is a guy who, when he was the number 2 in this offense and the team didn't have much else to go to outside of Amari Cooper, he truly thrived. And he's going to hold down that flanker spot. While CD moves around in the slot. And Cooks will get some outside run and some inside run. But Gallup is going to be that guy who's consistently on the outside. And we haven't got a chance to see it yet. But I'm going to be fairly confident that Gallup is going to be the one starting in 2 receiver sets at some point. They're going to make sure he feels good. They're going to make sure he's ready. But I think he's going to be the one starting in 2 receiver sets. So we lock in 3 of the 4 pieces that we wanted for our Dallas stack. And so Jake Ferguson, we have a while before we got to worry about him as our tight end 2. If he's going to be our tight end 2, then we're probably going to go 3 tight ends in this format for this structure. And that's why we kind of loaded up on running back. So now we could take Roschon Johnson and maybe one more shot like a Chuba Hubbard. At running back, we're going to be good at 5. We'll go 8 receivers, 3 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks. And we're going to try and coordinate a late season This is the interesting part because you look at week 17 correlation. That's a big part of normal best ball, right? Just kind of throwing together. Hold on. 10th round too early for Goff and a single QB on Underdog. I don't think so. I don't think it's too early. So if we look at just where he went in this draft. So he went 7 picks after ADP. He went in the 11th. But Goff was the QB 12. Where was Goff in points per game last year? Let's pull up PlayerProfiler.com. I used to know this shit on the back of my head. I'm losing my focus here as I get into the video game here, the video content. QB 14. QB 14 last season, and he's getting drafted at QB 18 this season. So that's absolutely not too early for Jared Goff. Sorry, he's being drafted at QB 17. He got drafted at QB 18 in this draft. So Chad, when we talk about especially weekly winners, first of all, I think the Lions offense is going to be a fast pace of play offense. They are not going to be a team that's grinding the ball. We saw this with the absence of Jamal Williams and the entry of a much more dynamic back in David Montgomery. They have the backfield of a team that's going to play fast, and they don't have a lot of pass catching weapons. They're going to try and run the ball, right? But even run heavier teams can be fast paced. We saw the Eagles do this. So there's going to be a lot of points for Jared Goff. There's not a lot of defense. So there's going to be a lot of high octane games, high game totals for Detroit. And so he makes sense with his weapons at cost on regular Underdog drafts. And then when you think of weekly winners, Goff is going to be a highly sought after option at quarterback in DFS lineups. And so he is a guy who if you can pair with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm really not interested in Goff unless I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I understand what you're getting at with the ADP, but when you think about the correlation you have to put together and the value at cost, and with weekly winners, just the ability to give you that QB1 week at his value, he is very well worth his ADP right now. We're 1 pick away. Now, I know I said I don't necessarily want Jaylen Warren, but 11 picks after ADP Jaylen Warren is a lot more interesting. Isaiah Hodgins is somebody who I normally wanted to get some shots with, but it's a little troublesome now with the fact that Sterling Shepard looks really good right now in camp, and we don't have a lot of clarity on what's going to happen in this receiver room. So Jaylen Warren goes. We lose out our option there. I don't like really any Bears later in the rounds in the draft. There's not really any Cowboys to draft. So we can go receiver here. And by far the receiver with the most upside right now is Marvin Mims. We already made our shot on Elijah Moore. We don't need a double dip in this offense. Without coordinating with Watson, we're essentially saying that we could have went Higbee as our there as our unstacked tight end there at the end, but it's too late for that. He goes. I like the Mims pick. There's going to be a consolidated target share in Denver, and he was already going at a late ADP. Starts going even later because he didn't play with a hamstring. I think that's a situation we don't need to read too much into. And we're going to take Roschon here on the way back. Should he come back to us, I'll be devastated if he does not. But with 4 RBs and 5 RBs with some running backs on the board, I'd be pretty shocked if he didn't fall. I have St. Brown, JMO, and Gibby. Yeah, I mean, Jameson Williams is a bust, so I wouldn't do that. But yeah, that's the way to do it. You know, if you have those pieces, you know, Goff is well worth it. I mean, Gibbs is going to have a lot of high value touches. Montgomery is going to have a lot of high value touches. So I'm not the biggest proponent of stacking a quarterback with a running back, but if they're going to get a lot of pass catches, then I can get behind it. I can get behind even a Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley stack, even though I don't love it. Roschon, are you fucking kidding me? Oh my gosh. That is an absolute killer. With 18 seconds on the clock, we have to pivot and figure out where we want to go here. I know I said I wanted backs with a ton of asymmetrical upside, but I'm going to take Kenny Gainwell just because I don't like what happens after this range. We said we wanted a 5 running back build. That's kind of what we've set out to do this entire draft. If we veer away from the 5 RB build that we've got structured going right now, all the wheels could fall off. So we're going to go Gainwell, and we're going to take a guy who just has, less upside than Roschon Johnson, but a little more certainty in what we know his role is going to be right away. And Gainwell still has that camp hype, and the potential upside to lead that backfield in touches. It's not my favorite pick. But it's the pick we made. It's the pick we were forced into. Man, Roschon Johnson. I freaking jinxed us. I jinxed us good. This is an interesting build so far. So naked tight ends there with just a crap ton of running backs, all of which at cost, I like Connor. At cost, I like Dylan. At cost, I like Bigsby. I haven't had a lot of Mitchell with fragility and projected usage. And then I love Roschon at ADP. You have a Herbert, Allen stack with Dotson and McLaurin from Washington. Washington could be an offense under Eric Bieniemy that is higher octane this season. In a weekly winners format, I have Dotson, Gibson, and Howell. So a nice little triple stack on a team that I went late QB for QB2 and 2 QBs with. So kind of had a Tannehill and Howell lineup as my QB2 and 3. So I like the potential upside on a week-to-week basis that Washington has, especially because they have to play 6 games against Dallas, Philly, and the Giants. So you have 6 games where you could have a potential shootout if Washington is capable of keeping up with those offenses, because we know from their defense, they're going to be pretty stout, but they're going to have a lot of trouble slowing those teams down. So I kind of like what he's going there. Tight end might be the one position where I can just completely forfeit correlation altogether. Thinking back on it, I should have done it with Tyler Higbee. But you know what? At the end of the day, I like the Marvin Mims pick. He's a lot of upside. If Judy or Sutton or Cutter traded one of the two, which I don't really think is that likely anymore. I think we're well past the point where that's likely. He's got a lot of upside. So we're going to wait here for this to come back around. Unfortunately, I don't hate the idea of Hyatt 13 picks past ADP, but we're going to go Ferguson here if we can. Fingers crossed. Earlier today in the same draft where Dak went 20 picks before ADP, Jake Ferguson went 20 picks before ADP. Obviously, we don't have to worry about that here. We're well shy of 20 picks, but we have one team with one tight end left that we need to worry about. Where's the dude who had you turned Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle into Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones without? I mean, that one was certainly a call. No Aaron Rodgers on the team with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So people have just completely lost their minds in these lobbies. We're going to take Ferguson. And then the goal here in the 16th is to come back around with our final running back. Maybe not, honestly, because I like the idea of Hubbard, Hilaire, Deuce Vaughn, maybe for... No, I won't draft Deuce Vaughn. I'm not going to... Don't worry, everyone. I'm not going to get that crazy with it. Zach Ertz cleared for full activity. I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here in terms of talking points, but that's just it's a very interesting event that's happening because this guy turned his knee into pulled pork in week 10 of the season, a multi-ligament tear. and is essentially like 2 weeks behind Javonte Williams, if that, and maybe in like 6 weeks behind him in terms of injury. He's at 33 years old. I'm not buying that he's 100% healthy. I'm not buying that he's going to be healthy in week 1. And I'm not buying that he's not going to get re-injured. This is incredibly fast for a 33-year-old who was on the downturn of his athleticism before he had this injury. So what's he? Sure, he's cleared for contact. His knee is probably stable, but what does he look like? How does it look like when he cuts? And he certainly doesn't have more juice than Trey McBride. So you can't convince me to fade Trey McBride because of Zach Ertz. And I'm going to capitalize on what little discount we can. I would like to try and get Trey McBride as our final tight end here if we can, like at the very last pick. So it's our pick now. Probably going with a wide receiver here. And I'm going to take somebody. I don't like Jerome Ford. I don't like any of the running backs in this area. I'm not a fan of Chase Claypool. So I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to take Darius Slayton far ahead of ADP because I think he has that deep threat role locked in. And I get him twice a week as my correlated partner in a Dallas lineup. I'm very comfortable with my triple stack in Chicago. I don't think any more is necessary because quite honestly, I just don't see it with Chase Claypool. I'm not convinced he has this starting job as the deep threat lined up for the rest of the season. I'm more certain that Darius Slayton has that role even with Jalen Hyatt. Tyler Scott is an impressive asset out of Cincinnati. And Slayton is somebody who has had trust with this team. He's been a target leader before. Claypool was a guy who got traded mid-season. The Bears had that draft, and they said, wow, I can't believe the value we could have gotten at pick 32, and instead we have Chase Claypool, a guy who we can't even get to learn the playbook. Chase Claypool does not know the playbook. He didn't know the plays. He wasn't working hard enough. Wasn't in the film room. And these are the players that just flop before us. Every single year, they flop. So Slayton's been a guy who has been consistently picked well above ADP. So again, we look back at how this draft could have shaked out without Marvin Mims. We could have taken Tyler Higbee and then Jake Ferguson and had our 3 tight ends and then had Gallup, potentially Slayton, and Claypool. I actually think Claypool might make it back to us here at 201, even though we're not going to take him. And that could very well be the difference in our draft. If Claypool proves me wrong and has some spike weeks where he's one of the most valuable assets in DFS, then he's going to prove me wrong. And we're going to make a mistake in our lineup. But if Marvin Mims can get it done a couple of times, then that's really going to pay out. That's a pick that's really going to pay off for us. That's probably going to be the one part of this draft that haunts me. It's going to be the one part of the draft that haunts me. And man, this is tough. This is really tough because Clyde Edwards-Helaire could just vault right back up to being one of those top RBs. Hunt's potentially signing with the Vikings. Yeah. I think that's where we go if he makes it back. I just don't think that's going to happen. Chuba and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a dichotomy. What should our last running back be? This is part of my game where I feel like, God, son of a bitch, dude. I'm probably getting this demonetized for all the language. I can't help it. This is what happens when you put me on a stream by myself. No one has any idea what I'm doing in here. They just let me into StreamYard. I can go live whenever I want. Don't tell Seth I said that. But all right, we got last running back here. We can go correlated with Deuce Vaughn. I'm not going to do that, but we can go Hubbard or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm going to go with Chuba Hubbard. I think he's a guy who's going to be more involved right away. I think he's a guy who has more, he's going to have more support from the coaching staff. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has, we've been here before. He hasn't really panned out. It's easy to say that, it's a new offseason and they're getting him touches, in camp and everything. Pacheco's been kind of injured. He's been banged up, and it's been tough for him to get steady touches in camp, and it seems like they're not worried about trying to do so. Jerick McKinnon's old. He's a pass-catching back. They don't want him getting camp touches. He's had knee injuries before. They are not trying to let Jerick McKinnon get hurt before it's time to actually play real football games. So I'm not necessarily buying all this camp hype in Clyde Edwards-Helaire yet. I do think he's absolutely worth a dart throw in all leagues. Now, the interesting spot will be where we go from here, because a third tight end is probably where we need to go. And we need to have somebody with somewhat high passing volume, or at the very least a heavy role in the offense. So Trey McBride is a guy who should have a heavy role in the offense, but you don't know how high volume his passing offense is going to be, even though they are, going to be a terrible team. You have Mike Gesicki, who's going to share time with Hunter Henry, but Gesicki could get a lot of that red zone work. So we're on the clock. It's time to make our decision. And I'm going to put my faith in the Penn State product to play a better role in this offense than we expect. And I'm going to draft Mike Gesicki to round out our lineup. So as this draft comes to a close, we have Fields, Prescott at the quarterback position. We got some stacks rolling with them. Excuse me. It's getting hot in here in the studio. We drafted too much fire. At running back, it's Saquon, Rachaad White holding down the RB1 and 2 spot every week. And then behind us, we have some upside and maybe some stability in Devon Achane, Kenneth Gainwell, and Chuba Hubbard. And then we have a loaded receiver group with CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Diontae Johnson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Elijah Moore, Michael Gallup, Marvin Mims, and Darius Slayton. And then running out with a hodgepodge of low-cost, high red zone threat tight ends in Cole Kmet, Jake Ferguson, and Mike Gesicki. So leave me a little grade how I did here on the weekly winners. We got Tyler Knably in the chat. I got after it. Best you believe. I got after it. We're going to get that demonetization warning any minute after this video gets processed, most likely. And he said, oh, damn. I don't know what that meant. Oh, the draft is almost done. That's why. Yeah, you were too late, Tyler, and you could have been here. But you had things. I don't know what they were, Mr. Conspicuous, but Tyler Knably, big fan, big friend of the program. I would assume he's a big fan of the program, but he's a big friend of the program. A player profiler truther, a player profiler original. You've seen him on Mock Draft Live before. You're at work. All right. Well, can't blame you. Can't blame you for being at work, getting that money up. That is going to wrap up our draft for PlayerProfiler.com. This has been Mock Draft Live. I hope you enjoyed the ride. I hope you enjoyed the squad. And I'll be sure to update y'all when I win $20,000. Wonder what week it's going to be. Probably a week where the Giants play the Cowboys. For Player Profiler, for Mock Draft Live, I am Matt Babich. Good night, everyone.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you. allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.